Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session to meditate together. No matter where you are, which country you are in, now we are together to investigate the mind, understand the mind, understand life a little more. This world is full of all kinds of issues. From the personal mental challenges, anxiety, aggression, loneliness, all kinds of issues, to the social ones, all kinds of crises, violence, climate change. Environment, war. All these issues are incessant, existing in different forms. The human beings have been trying to solve these issues one by one. But it doesn't work. All kinds of issues keeps popping up on a daily basis. Unless we all turn inward to really understand the relationship between the individual and society, understand the inner world, realize deeply all human issues are the issues of the mind. To eradicate all the issues, we have to take some very radical measures. That's to change the mind immediately. To let the mutation take place immediately. Or else, all the issues are continuing. And life, for most people, is a perpetual battlefield. That's why we meditate. Not in the sense of a method, or system, or discipline, but a way of life. To let oneself transform oneself immediately, radically, totally. It is only when everybody, each of us, change radically, then the whole world will be possible to change for the better. To meditate is to seriously investigate the mind, not your mind, not my mind, but the mind. No matter which culture you are in, which language you speak, which education you received, the mind is same. The mind functions in the same way. The personal issues can be very different outwardly. But one looks carefully, one would find the issues only exist in different forms. The issue is the same issue. That is, the mind is in disorder. To meditate is to see this disorder in oneself clearly, deeply, instantly, totally. In that very seeing, that disorder disappears. So to meditate is to see this disorder moment by moment. In this moment by moment seeing, the life has been changed totally. In the psychological study, many different kind of disorders has been described, different symptoms. We are not talking about that. That's too superficial. Beneath all those disorders and many other unspeakable disorders, there is one common disorder that human beings are facing. That's the self, the ego. All kinds of mental challenges come from the self, the ego. In other words, the self is the only source for all kinds of mental challenges, for all kinds of human issues. Without tackling the self, the ego, meditation is not. So today, let's look at the self. Understand it a little more. Before we start today's investigation, the speaker is inviting you to stay silent for 3 or 4 minutes together, to empty everything, to come back to this moment. Then let's embark on this journey together. The self is a very complicated topic. Because the self exists in all kinds of subtle forms. Look around life. Almost every corner of it has been occupied by the self. All kinds of self-concern, all kinds of self-indulgence, all kinds of self-pity, all kinds of self-consciousness. In a world where people are becoming more and more individual, it is manifesting more and more power of the self in dividing people, in creating this isolation, in creating all kinds of issues, conflict between people, between countries, cultures. The self has been such a very entrenched concept in many societies. Almost all human societies are built on the self, on the concept of the self. All kinds of human needs are from desires of the self. It is obvious we exist as an individual, as a person. Just like you see the speaker, it is one person. But does he exist independently from others? Or not? Outwardly, we are all individuals. But inwardly, are we still individuals in the sense of being separated? In that very view of separation, the concept of the self is developed. So everyone works for the self to make the self happy, to make the self emotionally stable. But one may have found out that it is impossible to stay peaceful all by oneself when the things around one is full of violence, aggression from other people or other egos. those things that attract you, like commercials, all kinds of media information, are all driven by other egos for their purposes. In a world built upon the self, the world is full of mutual exploitation, mutual use. For most people, they probably don't realize the self, the issue of the self specifically. But subconsciously, the mind is very sensitive to the self, to all the aggressions, all the violence from the self. It's no wonder that in the daily life, people still do some decent behaviors, speak some decent verse, but the aggression beneath is there. You can't find the verbal proof for that because the mind, the self, is very cunning. But the problem, the aggression, the violence, the conflict arising from the self is there. The turbulence of the mind, when it reacts to this, is there. So to meditate is not to make the self happy. It's to see clearly the havoc the self has created on each human being. In that very seeing, that's to understand the total structure of the self. To be able to aware of the self in the life. Found the interactions between you and your friends, the people around you. To be able to perceive the self. To be highly alert for the self. Then, meditation becomes a fight against the self. What is the self? Physically, we exist as the full body here. And the mind, the brain, is part of this body. But psychologically, why there is such a concept called the self. The thoughts go around a center. The self. We think about the self. We think about the pleasure of it. Seek pleasures for the self. All kinds of self-interest. All kinds of motivations come from this pursuit of the self-interest. All the energy in the body goes towards the center. In that direction, the mind becomes confused, conflicted, turbulent. The more we consider about ourselves, the more turbulent the mind is. You may have found it already in yourself. The self corresponds to a series of images, a series of thoughts about me. The praise from others, the insult from others. The title, the education, the experience, the family history. Money. Fame. Position. Even the dressing. Face. Name. All kinds of concepts, thoughts, symbols for the center, the self. And all the activities arise out of that motivation for the self. We compete. We strive. We crave. We want. The mind is always stuck in an image about the future. I will become something. I want to achieve something. I want to have something. The mind goes around the self, craving for all kinds of things to make the self happy. The mind is never at present, because the mind is always in a mood of achieving, becoming, seeking. Look at the world. All kinds of human activities are out of seeking something, to get something, acquire something. there are all kinds of crises for resources. Because all the selves are seeking, are wanting. In that mood, nothing is enough to satisfy those desires. Everything can become scarce. In that mood of seeking, due to the self, human beings are always wanting more from nature, wanting more from the environment, wanting more from the earth. They never return something to the nature except the rubbish, the pollution. Individually, because the self, one creates more and more. The mind is stressed. The mind is hurt because there are so many competitions, so many conflicts from others. In that craving, in that seeking, one loses the love. Because love is not seekable. Only in giving, love exists. That's why in an environment full of seeking, craving, the compassion is scarce. Due to the conflict between the selves, we become more and more individual, more and more egocentric. We crave for company. Then we feel lonely. We can't be ourselves. We can't be alone. We also can't stay with another because the conflict between the selves. Because the older selves are craving, not giving. So for one who is really serious in transforming oneself from the skills of life, one has to stop seeking immediately. To see the danger of the seeking. We usually don't get the things we seek. And this only leads to more hurt, The process of seeking something is a process of building up the self. If one stops seeking immediately, that's to end the self. In a state of giving, the mind is rich. The mind moves away from poverty. In a state of giving, the self is not. The mind is full of love. The mind never feels lonely. So, in other words, to meditate is to stop the energy flowing inwardly. Instead, to let energy flow out to more people. To give, not to seek. Being able to do so is already the greatest wisdom ever for life. A peaceful, joyful, and a compassionate life. So now it's time to meditate, to empty everything immediately, to end the self moment by moment, following the audio guide. Let's do this together. And see you soon in a few minutes. Or a couple of minutes. Now, let's take a 10-minute meditation. Start by taking a moment to find a comfortable position to sit in a posture that you feel relaxed and get alert. Let hands rest on your knees or laps. Let the eyes close gently. Soften your forehead. Act a soft smile in the corner of your lips. Breathe naturally. As you breathe in, be aware that you are breathing in. Feel the sensation of breathing in. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. As you breathe out, be aware that you are breathing out. Feel the sensation of breathing out. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. Fix your attention on the breath. Let go of any thought, words, images. This moment, nothing is more important than breath. While you are listening to the bell, check where your attention is. If it wasn't on the breath, after the bell, gently invite your attention back to the breath and sustain your attention on the breath. Slowly bring your awareness back to this room. Feel into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. When you are ready, open your eyes. Hopefully, the past 10 minutes, 15 minutes, has brought you some peace and calm. If you like this session, please share it with more people. Inviting more people, join to meditate, to understand life a little more. You're also welcome to donate to the foundation. All the income will be used to help the foundation bring clarity and peace to more people. Thank you in advance. In this culture, people are over-concerned about the self. Self has become so important. For most people, the pleasure becomes the only meaning of life. The self craves for pleasure. While the self is creating the havoc on each of us. Such over-concern about the self, all the mischiefs made by the self, become issues. Become issues. Then the mind, the self, seeks solution to these issues. And in actuality, this seeking only enhances the self-concern, the self-indulgence. Unless we end the self immediately, stop considering the self immediately. That's to say, to empty the thoughts immediately. Empty the consciousness immediately. And in that emptying, the mind sees clearly everything. In that clarity, there are no issues. Because all the confusion is created by the self. Where there's no self, there is no confusion. Then there's an order in life. not an order imposed by an authority, but an order when the mind comes upon the truth. When the mind has been away from the greatest disorder ever, the self. In a life where there's no self-concern, the life is beautiful because it is simple. The compassion abound. Where there's compassion, there are no issues, no conflict. We care about each other. In that care, nobody feels lonely. Everybody feels secure. And only that society and only when everyone change immediately, that society will be possible. So, by the end of the session, thank you for being here. To meditate, to investigate the mind. And hopefully, all of us can bring the meditation to life, to empty, to see the fact, to live in fact, in truth, at each moment. To let the energy flow out to more people, to help more people, to enlighten more people. And the final word, stay peaceful, joyful, and take care.